In this section, I want to start the discussion on IPv6 addressing. I want to show you different methods of assigning IPv6 address to an interface, and next I will go for IPv6 routing protocols such as RIP Next Generation, OSPF3, and EIGRPv6. So let's go to router 1 first. And the first thing you need to know about IPv6 addressing is this. You need to enable IPv6 routing on a router. So for this, I need to go to configuration mode and issue the IPv6 unicast routing command here. And when you do this, IPv6 is enabled on a router. It is not enabled by default on switches or routers. You need to enable it, and after that you can assign any IPv6 address to any interface that you need to. So if I check show IPv6 interface brief, this is exactly the same command that you use on IP except the v6 here. You can see that I haven't enabled IPv6 on any interface. If I want to enable this, I need just one line of command. If I go to interface, for example, fast00, I can issue IPv6 enable, and this is the interface. This interface is IPv6 enabled now. If I check IPv6 interfaces in brief, you can see that now I have a link local IPv6 address. The first part is FE80. The second part is created using the MAC address, and FFFE in between the two parts of this MAC address. And that's it. You only need this if you want to have only a link local IPv6 address. Now if I go to switch 2 and go to routing, enable IPv6 unicast routing, and if you are on a real switch, you need to have IPv6 unicast routing distributed, and prior to that you need to enable SDM prefer IPv4 and IPv6. This is the command that you need to enable on a router to have IPv6 routing. So you need two pieces of command on a switch, but this is not a real switch, this is just a MOC, so I need to assign this command. And after that I will go to interface VLAN 16 and have IPv6 enabled. That interface is enabled now. Show IPv6 interface in brief. You can see that now I have this interface like this, configured with this, and if I go to router 1 and try to ping this, I can have ping IPv6, or I can have the normal ping. The normal ping understands IPv6, so it will use IPv6 ping by default. And you can see that it asks me which interface you are going to use to send this ping echo messages. And why is this asking for the interface? This is because any interface that you apply IPv6 unicast, anything that you have link local IPv6 address will have the same prefix, so it doesn't know which way to send the packet. So I will tell to send to fast Ethernet 00, and now you can see that the ping is successful. This is one way to enable an interface to have an IPv6 address. I try another way. IPv6 enable is going to be removed from this interface, and on switch 2 I want to issue the same thing. Now IPv6 enable. Now any IPv6 command that I issue under this interface will enable the IPv6 link local address by default. So if I go and assign IPv6, for example, address, and here I assign a global IPv6 address like 2001.16, and I'm not going to assign the next part. I just want to assign the prefix, and this is the prefix, and I have a slash after this telling this that this is a 64-bit prefix. And after that I will tell the interface to use EUI64 algorithm to create the next part of this IPv6 address, that means the host part, and hit enter. You can see that if I check show IPv6 interface in brief, now I have the link local IPv6 address in addition to the IPv6 address that I have assigned, and you can see that because I have used MAC address for to create the next part, to create the host part of this IPv6 address, the two addresses share the same component for this. Now I can do the same on switch 2. So let's go and copy this address exactly and put it here. Now I want to check IPv6 interfaces in brief. You can see that I have it. Now if I try to use ping to reach, you can see that global IPv6 address does not ask you about the outgoing interface. This is because this is global and it is assigned in an interface, and the prefix should be different from the other interfaces. Again, I'm not going to have this. I'm going to remove this command on switch 2, and I can do this in another way. I can assign it using the, for example, auto configuration. I can go out to switch 2 and use IPv6 address auto configured. I shut this interface first, and again no shut it. Now if I check my IPv6 address, show IPv6 interface brief, you can see that it has the same prefix, and I haven't assigned it to this interface. It has received the prefix from the neighboring router, and this is because any interface assigned with a prefix tries to advertise that prefix to other routers. So if I want to stop router 1 from advertising this prefix, I need one line of command. I can go here, IPv6 ND, and in some platforms you have suppress RA, in some platforms you have RA suppress. Here I have suppress RA, so I hit enter, and if I go to switch 2 and shut this interface and no shut it again, you can see that I don't have this prefix any longer. That's it. So RA is one method to assign IPv6 address to any interface, any neighboring interface, and this is a good way to advertise the prefix to the computer on one subnet, and those computer will use EUI64 to configure the second part. That means the host part of their IPv6 address. I want to show you one more line of command here. I just want to remove this IPv6 addressing that I have created here. Instead of using EUI64, I want to assign the whole IPv6 address. So I type IPv6 address 2001.16.1, and it should use 64-bit prefix like this. So I hit enter, and the next thing you need to know is you can assign multiple IPv6 address to an interface. You are not limited to one IPv6 address. You can have even link local IPv6 address assigned to this interface. I want to do this. I add IPv6 address FE80, and let me have this. For example, this is going to be in this segment 16 and 1, and after that I will tell to this interface this is a link local IPv6 address, and that's it. Now if I try to show IPv6 interface in brief, you can see that my assigned link local IPv6 address replaces the automatically created IPv6 link local address. Now I want to remove this. The only place that I need to assign link local addresses manually is the frame relay interfaces on GNS3 actually, because GNS3, anytime that GNS3 loads a router, it assigns a random MAC address to that interface. So there is a good place to assign link local IPv6 addresses manually.